So today is Friday, January 10th. It is the 10th anniversary of my marriage that is currently being dissolved. So a very bittersweet, strange energy day in addition to being in Los Angeles during the Great Fires. I think we're going to call these the LA fires. They're going to go down in history because these fires have fundamentally remade wide swaths of Los Angeles County. The Palisades. And I want to talk a little bit about the Palisades. No, I don't want to talk about the Palisades because the Palisades, there was a reason they were called the Palisades. It was beautiful. So, and it does not look like that now. Not that it won't ever look like that again. And Altadena, the same thing. One of my joys that I hold from living in Southern California, in Los Angeles, specifically in the Los Angeles basin, even more specifically, is we're surrounded by hills on one side, and then we've got the ocean on the other side. And purple mountains. The purple mountains that we sing about, we actually have them here. And when you're driving, particularly on a very clear day or a clear evening, if you drive towards the hill, either on the 405 north or the 110, when you're heading north, and you can see these hills laid out before you. Similarly, if you were up on Topanga Canyon and in the evening and you looked out upon the valley, the San Fernando Valley, how beautiful the twinkling lights. And you appreciate the scale of the Los Angeles area because you can see it. And all of these lights, in your mind, maybe that represents one person, two people, you don't know. And there are all these little houses and you can see the outlines and you think, there's a whole other reality going on inside that house, different from this house, but you can see it laid out before you in Los Angeles. And let me give you a couple other of my favorite rides down in LA. If you're coming down, if you're heading north on La Cienega or La Brea, and you're going through the hills there, Baldwin Hills, you look down, there's a point when you can see into the basin and you see downtown and you see Koreatown and then you see Mid-City and then you see Beverly Hills and you can see Century City and you see Santa Monica. So you've kind of got this panorama of the city and you're kind of flying down it in your car and you're coming into, and then you kind of splash into Target or some of the other businesses that are at the end of that particular stretch. But it's so beautiful. And I always, when I'm riding in my car, as we do here in Los Angeles, I love the idea that there's all this that I had no idea of, and the beauty of those twinkling lights at night and just the just vastness of it all in the daytime. It is beautiful. I'm going to ode to my city today. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was born when what is now the headquarters of the World Church of Scientology. It used to be the Old Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, which you may now know as Cedars-Sinai. And that's where my son was born. So my son and I were born at the same hospital. Yay! It's kind of cool. Didn't think that would happen in a big city like Los Angeles. So I've been here. I actually grew up, however, spent my what they call formative years in Pasadena, very close to Altadena. And many of my mother's best friends, when I was growing up, lived in Altadena. As you may have heard, Altadena is an area that is historically Black, in as much as it can be. For instance, if I can give a little historical context, they say that Altadena was not a sundown town. And Altadena is up in the hills. So that's why you're going to say, why is this community gone? It's in the hills, literally. Anyways, and that was another view when you're going up Lake Avenue. I'm telling you, people, when you're in the cars, you're going up Lake, because one of my mother's best friends lived on Loma Alta. That house is now gone. And when we would go, and if I didn't let you know, we were not rich, so we had little hoppity hop raggedy rag ass cars, and it was a iffy if we could make it up those hills. And those of you who have been up those hills know what I'm talking about. You go up, and you're like, at one point, you're like, okay, I am going towards heaven. It's amazing. It's an amazing sight. And I don't want to be one of those people that participates in emergency tourism or disaster tourism, but man, I've got memories there, so to speak. Altadena was not a sundown town, therefore blacks could be there after dark. They could live there. So, for instance, one of the neighboring cities, Pasadena was, but very notoriously Burbank was a sundown town, as well as Glendale. And I say this because I was told in my childhood we couldn't go there at night. I am not that old. Okay? I am not that old. But, so, sundown towns. Manhattan Beach, all of the beach cities, South Bay. So if Palisades would have been a sundown town. Altadena, not a sundown town. So there's where you can go. So the percentages there are not going to mix. That's not to say in the Palisades that it's all white. It's not. But it is fairly affluent. Fairly. Of course, there are people, working class, that are in there, that own their houses. But the fact that they own those houses, if they've owned them for a long time, I want to remind people that they've been able to pull wealth out of those houses, out of those ownerships over the years that would have benefited them at the time. So if you own property in the western part of Los Angeles, the western Los Angeles County, you are very affluent. You have family. You have wealth. You have wealth. And if you bought the wealth longer, you've had the wealth longer. That you bought in shorter, that these other people that brought in or currently and paid more, doesn't matter. You still have the wealth, the value. And that's for just a real estate commentary, not one in particular to anything else. Also focusing on just wealth privilege, generational wealth, white privilege. That's a concept that people don't understand. So I grew up in Altadena, and what we were doing in Altadena are the things that we do today. These were the communities that embraced natural practices early, that were doing yoga, that were eating organic, that were eating vegan and vegetarian long before it became mainstream, that knew about things like quinoa and eating nuts and seeds and your minerals and your vitamins, and they had all of these alternative things then that are mainstream now. And even past Trader Joe's, your famous Trader Joe's, was a place that they could shop, because Trader Joe's catered to this culture, this counterculture. Maybe you'd call them hippies. There were a lot of hippies in Pasadena as well. So Altadena, Pasadena, a lot of cross-pollination there. My mother was involved in this. They were involved in the Black Panthers. They were involved in all kinds of protests. They were always looking out for the people, the children, specifically. I actually participated in a program. If those who were born in the sweet spot, and I'm very much of Kamala Harris's. She's a couple years older than me, but I'm very much in that, where I was one of the first classes in integrated in the schools, bust, and all that kind of jazz. That's all these people in this. What I'm talking about in Altadena. There's a similar enclave, much more concentrated in the Topanga area, which is right next to the Palisades in Malibu. So there's a lot of connection to the sea there. A lot of these people who have held what we used to call alternative practices and beliefs, which are now mainstream. Yoga, quantum theories, aliens, food, the purity of the food, making sure that minerals, they were the ones who were the first to be anti-nuclear. We're talking about the counterculture. We're talking about the hippy-dippy people. And there are various shades of them. And so that's what Altadena was. As a fact, one of my mother's friends was an actress, as many are here in Los Angeles. And just an aside, there was does everyone know this? That yes, California, the people are friggin' beautiful in California. Unlike any place I have ever seen in my life. And I have gone around. Okay, there's some places where I'm like, okay, yeah, they're pretty good looking. But in general, the Southern California area has the most beautiful people on earth. And the reason that is so is because it's the entertainment capital on earth. And a lot of people come here to become an actor, an actress, a writer, a producer. There's other trades as well. And you've got artists, dancers, all of that, singers, and everyone who supports them. So all of these people converge here. And some of them they tend to be open-minded. Okay, because they're creative. And then two, they also tend to be pretty darn good looking. So not everybody gets into the movies, right? I'm going to make it in the movies. No, most of them do not make it in the movies, but they have to. They're here. It was nice. It was cheap. Used to be cheap. Beautiful weather, which lends us to be a little more laid back. In warm weather countries, people are a little more laid back because it's hot. But so why not stay? Okay, I'm a good looking person. I'm here. I'm not an actor. I have to do something else. Okay, I'm going to pump some gas. Actor starts pumping gas. Other people come and say, hey, you're a good looking guy. And he's like, oh yeah, cool. And then he meets the good looking girl who couldn't make it as an actress, and they are like, hey, I like you, yeah, we get along. They get married and they have beautiful kids and so on and so forth, and therefore you have just mathematics, dude. That's what happens. And all the other immigrants who come here, then they're all from other places. And if there's one truism to our kind, it's that we are to mix. We are to mix this DNA as widely and as far as possible. We should not be spending our DNA in the same cup. Then things go wrong. Our bodies, our machines, they don't work right when we do that. So no, we got to go out there and find our other connections, the ones that so we can change, and we can just enjoy all and bring together, in a sense, all of the power that we've forgotten by being segregated. We must come back together as one. Even if it's just in the consciousness. Doesn't mean physically, but it helps, because not having those barriers, anything that you can say that someone's different from you or better other than the way they behave and the character that they have and the being that they have, that is that's cutting us off from being able to recognize how we are one. So let's not do that. And Altadena was that place. So one of my mother's friends, where they learned all about, the auras, the chakras, the the di tarot, psychics, all of this stuff. She was an actress, so I'd say maybe like a C actress, kind of one, but she's very well known in the movement. Her husband, one of her husbands, because they did divorce, was a poet, and she was absolutely insanely gorgeous. And I think about the energy of all of those things, and the energy was love. The energy was help the people, and they. Although at the time I didn't realize it, because I was actively fighting against their counsel when they would tell me about the world. And I can sit here now, 50 something years later, or 40 something years later, and say they were right. We have some issues here. And I'm going to just talk. I'm going to talk because if, like many of you, you may have this feeling that you're supposed to do something. You're called to do something and you don't know what it is. You're fighting something. And so I'm just going to skip over that. And I decided about 15, 20 years ago that it was fear. Fear. If I want to recommend a book for someone, is Conversations with God. I know a lot of people are going to think that that's blasphemous. But I want to challenge you on that, because if someone else, a prophet, says they talk to God, why couldn't this person be talking to God? Just questioning you on that. So I decided the fearlessness, and that became my mantra and my affirmation that I am fearless. I am fearless because I knew that I could feel that something was holding me back, but I didn't know what it is or what it was, like why. I knew I had fears, like, somebody's going to kill me or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But what is this other fear? This is the fear not to ask people questions in the store, not to ask for directions. Sound familiar, man? Where does that come from? What am I thinking on that? So over this time, I've realized that I had this fear. I don't have a fear of speaking to anybody. I do this for a living. This is not something that scares me. I realized this when I was very young, that I could get up in front of people and I wasn't scared. Cool. I usually got tapped to like go out and be the hi, we're getting sixth grader or whatever, that kind of thing. Cool. And I was told, hey, you're pretty good at this. Go into forensics, do this, do the debate team, do that. And I never did. I did join student government, where I had one of the most revelatory years of my life in student government in the 8th grade, because I met the mentor of my life. And she's what I say now, that she is probably the most influential person on me in my life outside of my family. And she saw that I was, kind of smart, just like my best friend. That is, we best friend number one. Yeah, we had English together. Remember, I said we were rivals, so we were always the top 2 English students in all our classes except math, because he beat me in math. Because I've already explained that to math and me don't math. But anyway, so I had that experience, and I got to speak. I gave the graduation speech for 8th grade, and that was lifted me off to go to another high school, another junior high. I had to go to another junior high. So I'm telling you about growing up here in Los Angeles, and that was in Westwood, right near UCLA, where Bel Air fed into the school. So previously I was in Mid-City, not Mid-City, excuse me. What is now Koreatown used to be called Mid-Wilshire. And in that time, it was very much where the young professionals lived. So the rents were a little bit low. It had been kind of high, and they were moving west. And then that's when a lot of the Korean immigrants started moving in, and I was there right as it was becoming Koreatown. And so I was coming from that. So I went to a school where I forget how many different nationalities there were at the school, but I can say there were Laotian, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Filipino, Hawaiian, Assyrian, American, Mexican, Guatemalan, El Salvadorian, Peruvian. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It was like a, United Nations at this school. Amazing, where the most amazing teachers and amazing. So then I go to this other school on the other side of town where it's very, very rich kids, where we're bussed in. And I didn't like it at first, and I eventually fit in. But this was the first time. And I want to say when I was in Pasadena, it was fully integrated. I was bused. So I always went to fully integrated schools, which was amazing. Why would you want to do anything else? I did go to one year when we moved to LA, because we moved to LA in my sixth grade. And I went to a school in Westchester. And at that time it was very much white. We were anyone else was bused in, and it was only Black people. There were very few Latinos. There was one or two Asians. I mean, it was very, very white. And it was very different from the integrated experiences. That was where I had the problems with the mathing and the math and the teacher there. Bitch. Anyway. So I'm in the ninth grade. I go to a school in West Side. Also on the West Side, it's heavily Jewish. So this was the first time that I had gone to and been to school and exposed to a number of Jewish people. However, my mentor, she was Jewish, and because she was a convert. Her husband at the time was a rabbi, and she had lived in Israel, and she had shared those experiences. So I had a little bit of knowledge going into the ninth grade, and where I was actually got to meet Jewish people. A lot of them I met some before. Now don't say that, but that on a large number, and that was the reason why we were offered a chance to go to school in Israel. I'm going to pause right now because this is hard for me. Picking up. So we got the option. Came over one day. I came over the PA where they made the announcements and said, hey, there's this program sponsored by the World Zionist Organization and Youth Aliyah for people to go to Israel. Now, let me say, at the time, there was this gal that I thought she was my friend. She wasn't. I found out she was a pathological liar later. But anyway, she said something, and she was always like, because we're smart, the smart Black kids, so whatever. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna go to that. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna do it too. Or no, did I say that? I don't know. I don't remember, but whatever happened, she's like, I was just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, I'm gonna do it. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna do it too. Because I was starting to figure out. So it was one of those like, okay, bitch, checkmate. I'm gonna do it. Guess who went? Because who wasn't the pathological liar? Girlfriend went. Ninth grade is another story. I am a full-on Gen Xer, and I just want to say, in my humble opinion, the best, the sweetest time was 1983 through 1984. 1983 and 1984 were amazing friggin' years. Mostly for music, but just like, anyway. Gen X, you know what I'm talking about. So this program, it was sponsored by, as I said, the World Zionist Organization and Youth Aliyah. And for those who don't know, Aliyah is the principle of return for the Jewish people to Israel. Okay, I said I was going to just, so I'm just going to do it. Why am I you're probably sitting here going, why is she having such a hard time doing this? And maybe it's a clue when I'm saying World Zionists and Youth Aliyah. You might know where I'm coming from, but maybe not. So I guess talking about Israel is going to be a whole other, because that's not my point, not talking about that year, although I know that year is really an important thing that informs my sadness right now. So I spent 1983 and 84. 82 is good too. Wait, 82 to 84, or maybe 82 to 86, y'all. Let's somebody do a poll. That time in Israel, in Eretz Israel, was what I have always said is the best continuous year of my life. So the program was geared, and it was geared to encourage Jews to make Aliyah, return to Eretz Israel. So we had double Hebrew. We got all of they had worked out with the Los Angeles Unified School District that we would get credits for the years, so that it's not like we lost a year like many other, at the time. It was very difficult and it was weird about your school credits and all that jazz. And it was 10 months of intensive study and immersion in Israeli and Jewish culture. I loved it. As a matter of fact, I strongly considered converting. I came back. Remember, I was, because I was thinking about it. I was talking to my dad. We were driving around somewhere. I think it was my senior year of high school or somewhere right after I graduated high school. And maybe even a couple of years after that. And I said, hey, Dad, because my dad had a late in life, he got saved and he became Pentecostal. That's another story. But anyway, he was saved and all that. And so I said, Dad, I'm thinking about maybe converting to Judaism. But I went on to say, but I'm not sure, because I learned a lot about the laws. And I don't think, number one, I think the laws are stupid. And I don't think I could keep them. So I feel that it would be disingenuous of me to switch to a religion that I won't keep their laws. Like, I'm just going to show, yep, I'm a Jew, but you know what? I'm not going to follow any of your laws. I thought that would be wrong. And the conversion at that time was either conservative Judaism, the middle road, or religious. So, you kind of, one of those. And religious is the preference. So suffice to say that I learned a lot about Jewish culture. I learned a lot about Israeli culture, and I learned a lot about the intersections of oppression, particularly with respect to the Holocaust and the generational discrimination and persecution of the Jews as a people. Yes, I learned all of that. I took part of that because, as I said, my mother was very progressive. And her feeling was that Jews were a huge part of, and history bears out, a huge part of the civil rights movement, that Martin Luther King had many, many Jewish advisors, because They were sympathetic to the plight of Blacks in the United States because it paralleled many of their histories all over the world. And there's so many to go into. And I'm talking about pogroms in Eastern Europe. I'm talking about multiple expulsions all across Africa, across Europe, whatnot. And with the Holocaust being the last of them, that was really the catalyst that was able to push through the birth of the modern state of Israel. I am talking about going to Gadna, which is may be kind of demonized a little bit in the American media, so it's not understood. So you know that most countries in the world have conscription, right, where their youth have to devote a year or two or three to their military or be in university or some other thing. They give their youth something to do. We don't do that in the United States. We have a volunteer army. We don't conscript. We have them register for the draft in case something happens, but we do not have our young people in the military. We don't conscript them. Israel does. So I don't know of any other country that has a program like that. It's never occurred to me to look it up. But it's where you as a school child, you go for like a week and it's like a camp. And it's supposed to kind of acclimate you to life in the Army, as well as being proficient with things like guns, and that you're physically fit, that you know how to put a tent together, things that are very real in that very tiny country. I'm not going to sit here and recount the whole history of Israel. It's very well known. I am going to talk a little bit about what we learned and what I think I've since learned that contradicts some of the narratives. And once again, I'm going to go back to, remember, my program was with the World Zionist Organization and Youth Aliyah, and it was called LA High School in Israel. And I think it went on for about 20 years. It's no longer active. So we were very much, and I'll say it, indoctrinated in the history of Israel and the narrative of Israel. We learned all about Ben Yehuda. We learned all about the Zionists, and we had excellent teachers. We had an excellent history teacher. We also learned in Hebrew. And then we spent a little bit of time on the law. So this is where I started to learn about the beginning of Christianity, Judaism, how they differ, and started to see the through lines on racial and group segregation and discrimination, hatred, which was very insightful to me. We even went to a Holocaust seminar for 2 days, where we listened to survivors. I've met several survivors. I've seen their tattoos. I've heard their stories. One of my teachers, my my math teacher and my Hebrew teacher, she was born in a pigsty in Poland. Her parents lived in a pigsty on a farm in Poland for the duration of the war. A family, that's how they lived out there. So kind of Anne Frank, but from a pigsty, and she was born there. On the other hand, we also went to see Palestinians. We went to the West Bank. We went to Gaza. This is before. This was the 80s. It was during Lebanon. We were there when the Marines were bombed. There was a war. I danced with soldiers on a Saturday night, and they were dead from a tank shelling the next week. So going to Gadna, everyone, there's guns everywhere. Not like the United States. No. Very responsible. It's very different. But we felt the difference. And I remember when we were preparing, when my mother was raising money for me to go, and people would go like, aren't you afraid you're going to get bombed? The bombs are going to fall on you? You're going to get blown up? Yeah. When we got there, we learned to live with it. You learn. That's why it was so wonderful. Because at any time we could have been annihilated. So we learned to appreciate life. I love Israelis. They're amazing. And as I said, I fell in love with Judaism. I fell in love with the questioning. I fell in love with the scholarship. I fell in love with the willingness to think, because you are encouraged to question and to think in Judaism. The scholars, they have these amazing, just theoretical conversations about things based on the laws. I mean, I don't know all the details of the laws, but they do. So cool. They're having their conversation, and it's mind blowing, right? So all of these things attracted me to Judaism. The building, what they did in the deserts, changing. We went to so many seminars about the draining of the swamps that were there, and there was a lot of kind of, this place was a shithole when we got here, and look how it looks now, and look what we're doing. And that is absolutely something to be proud of. What I'm saying is that was one of the arguments that we heard. We talked a lot about the Golan Heights. We don't hear about the Golan Heights very much anymore, but that was and the narrative of the wars, Yom Kippur. So suffice to say, at the end of our time, there was not one of us that would not die for Israel. And many of my classmates, my group mates, my program mates, they actually made Aliyah. Some didn't, but still served in the army. And did and would go back and would participate in any wars if needed, and they could be called up. There's a special relationship between the United States and Israel. Which I held Israel in that regard as I watched Benny. Benny came onto the scene when I was in fucking high school, dudes. His ass don't need to be there no more. I'm going to be free to... The reason that it's hard for me to speak on this is because I love Israel so much. That is the reason this is so hard for me. Netanyahu is a criminal, just like Trump and just like Putin. Criminals know criminals. He is using the excuse of the hatred of people who are no longer on this earth to hide behind the fact that he himself should be in jail. He's indiscriminately ordering the killing of thousands of people. They are people. Even as I loved Israel 40 years ago, I knew it wasn't apartheid. I saw the parallels that my other program mates couldn't see. because they're not Black. So for 40 years, I've known that this is a ticking time bomb because apartheid cannot stand. The numbers don't work. There aren't enough Jews in the world to make up for the fact that a small portion of our population. What's really, really disturbed me is the conflagration of Zionism and Judaism. Criticizing Israel is not criticizing Judaism. Let me say that again for the people in the back. Criticizing Israel and Israeli policy is not criticizing Judaism. I want to know what conversations the rabbis are having about this. And I understand that they're not having them in public because this is what we used to call dirty laundry. You have a criminal who is utilizing beliefs, strongly held beliefs by some, that land belongs to a group of people from 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and that they deserve to come back. There is no reason why today, in what we know and who we are, that we are being informed by texts that were written 5,000 years ago, that were written 4,000 years ago, that were written 3,000 years ago, and so on and so on. We know too much because we know what happened. We know how bacteria works. We know a lot of things. There is no reason the Jews do not have a right to the land in Israel, just as a lot of people don't have rights to land today. Where is it we're trying to go back to? What is this mythical time when everybody was everybody and everybody knew who they were? That time has never existed. Our whole human history has been, we split up and we're trying to come back together again. There is no reason for us to look at any text that says some people belong on some piece of land somewhere. It doesn't fucking matter. What matters today, right now, is who is where and how they're going to be treated. Period. End of story. We already have too many crazy people up here talking about taking Greenland and taking Canada and 51st state. Well, goddamn motherfucker, I think there's a few in line before Canada. Okay? First of all, being Puerto Rico. I think they have dibs on the next statehood. And then after them, maybe even Washington, D.C. And then maybe after them, the Virgin Islands. How about American Samoa? Mariana Islands. What about those places? Yeah, they get first dibs on states. Understand what we have already, people. And has anybody told Trump that there's a lot of Asian people in Canada? And Native people in Canada? That it's not all white people? Has anybody told him that? Because he may, he might retract that shit once he learns that. Okay, because see, in Panama, he ain't trying to get Panama, right? He don't want them. He don't want the people. He just wants the canal. And Greenland, he's like, that's Europe. We'll take them. So has anybody told him about it? Yeah, somebody told him. Okay, so let's get back to Israel. I love my Israelis, and I want you to live. I love my Palestinians, and I want you to live. Let's find a way to live together. Indiscriminately killing people for a terrorist organization's actions is never the right way to go. It's a game of numbers. Okay, you're like, oh, well, those people are supporting those terrorists. Okay, why are they supporting the terrorists? Because usually the terrorists is bad guys. And, as much as the people, they may be someone's liberators. Or they're your terrorists, but they're someone else's liberators. During my time in Israel, do you know how much time we learned about the Argun and everything, and how there were the Israeli freedom fighters that were bombing Jerusalem, particular King David Hotel, anybody recall? And they were trying to get the British out, right? That was the whole point. They were terrorists, but they were those Zionists. They were the Zionist freedom fighter. It's all a matter of perspective. I know it's hard. I know perspective takes some brain cells, but you know what? We've got them, people. Use them, for God's sakes. Stop putting your head in the sand and not wanting to know and find out. Educate yourself a little bit about this. So we've got an untenable situation where you've got such a strong synergy between the political class in the United States and the political class in Israel. Very strong ties. I would not be surprised to hear when the great revealing happens, because it's gonna happen. I know y'all trying to distract and you don't want it to, but it's gonna happen. I want to talk to my liberals here for a minute, okay? Our people, meaning all the Democratic candidates and whatnot, all of these politicians, there's a very good chance that many of them took money from AIPAC. Okay, and that's maybe disclosed, but they probably also took some money from Russia. That Russian money was probably not disclosed to them as from Russia. Okay, now, my red friends out there, all of your politicians are compromised. I think in the Democratic Party, it's probably 80-20. In the Republican Party, it's probably 95-5. The major difference being that they knew they were taking Russian money. That's the difference. So when you're looking at and asking questions, why hasn't this been exposed? What the hell is happening? Blah, 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 blah. You know what's happening? They're trying to cover their asses. That is what is happening. So AIPAC's hands are all over all of our congresspeople, all of them, senators. I mean, and when I say Congress, I mean together, not the House of Representatives and the Senate. I mean both of those guys together. Okay? Lots of money also means lots of lobbyists. Okay? Lots of money also means PACs. Okay? All of these things come into play. Stop looking for saints. There ain't no saints here. There ain't no prophets either. What there are a bunch of people looking out for their own self-interest. So once again, this is the third time I'm doing it. Maybe the third time's the charm. My liberal-leaning, Democrat-loving, freedom-loving, Constitution-supporting peoples out there. I'm not talking about a party. to the people that understand what the American experiment is and what we're trying to do. If you are a politician that falls into this group, or you have some kind of power with the legislature or government in any way, shape, or form, come clean. Come clean now. Confess your sins to the American people. Tell us what you did and who you did it for and why you did it. This is very important. Tell us why. The reason you need to tell us why is because I suspect that a number of you were coerced. Physically, you were blackmailed or threatened. You were afraid for your family. Come clean. This has evolved. It's not just about you, and it's not just about your family. This is the kind of betrayal that history will remember. That we had a class of people who could have helped if they got over their own ego. Israel needs to stop the bombing immediately and the indiscriminate killing. People need to go on trial for war crimes. Additionally, we have other people who need to go to The Hague and be on trial for election interference on a massive scale. Additionally, we need to understand that many people that we have idolized, that we think are fantastic, that we take advice from, that give us tips that we wake up to every morning, they're only human. They may have done things that you would not approve of, but that's their personal business. The reason they didn't want you to know about that stuff is because they were worried about their pocketbook. As I am worried about my pocketbook. As everyone is worried about their pocketbook. Because everything we think and do is about our pocketbooks. We worry. Take your stand. This is about character. This is what a patriot is. A patriot cares not for their reputation. A patriot will do what they need to do for the people. We need patriots. Not fake ones. Not those that misunderstand what the American experience is and how important it is to this world. How Israel could have been that beacon in the Mideast. It's what they said they wanted. To be a place where all can come together in a geographical area because you believe in freedom, democracy. And let's try.